poor. Okay.
All right. So we will move ahead with what the status of Marin County, and I suppose the whole country and the whole nation is, the whole western part of the country, in this drought situation. So let's go ahead and proceed. Excuse my phone. Hello.
So I'd like to introduce from the Marin Municipal Water District, and Paul, forgive me if I say your last name wrong. It's Sellier?
Yep, that's spot on.
Perfect. Thank you very much for being here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. It's my pleasure to be here. I'm Paul Sellier, Operations Director with Marin Municipal Water District. And tonight, just a brief presentation, because I know you folks have a lot of important work to get through tonight as well, about our water supply situation and drought. And kind of this presentation is really targeted more for homeowners and our residents, for things that they can do to help us with the drought and some of the things that we can do to help them. So we'll have a really brief overview of Marin Water, just a minute or two, and then we'll get into the current water supply situation. And then what has the board of directors here at Marin Water been up to, excuse me, in terms of, what are the water use restrictions, and we won't read them all because there are a bunch of them. And then get into some conservation tips and, just general things that folks can do. At any point in time, if you guys have questions, just jump in and we can deal with them at any time. So as we get going here, Marin Water, you may not know, we are the oldest municipal water district in California, chartered in 1912. So we're special district number 1. And of course, that means we have a lot of really old water pipes and a system that was put together from many different small water companies over the years. Marin would have had 20 or 30 small water companies all over the place providing water to little neighborhoods. But we serve about 191,000 folks in the county, mostly along the sort of populous eastern corridor of 101 up to, about Novato. And of course, a little bit unique to many agencies, we have also the whole mountain. So there's 22,000 acres of watershed land that we're also responsible for managing. So we combine those two into our mission to protect our natural resources and to provide safe drinking water at a reasonable price to our residents here in Marin. Jumping into the water supply, so this is as of last Thursday. Normally this time of year, we're about 82% full. Right now, we're sitting right around 43%. As we look at these numbers in terms of how much water do we need for a year, factoring in both the potable demand and how much water we have to release to the environment for fisheries, we're at about a year. So if we were to experience the same sort of dry conditions that we had in 2020, which you can see up here, that the 2020 calendar year 2020 was sort of the second driest in 90 years. But the last 18 months together have been the driest in 140 years. Our records go back 142 years. So it's pretty darn dry. So probably sometime in the second half of next year, were we to experience the same kind of hydrology, right, rainfall and runoff that we got in 2020, we'll need some kind of supplemental water supply from Marin County. And we're working on that. For now, this is a review of our reservoir storage. So the black line is kind of where we've been in terms of our storage. And right now, this, although it says June here, that's really July 1st. We're right around 34,000 acre feet in the projection here. Actuals are about 33,500 acre feet. As we go out with the projections here, excuse me, the green line represents what we would expect from average rainfall in terms of what, how much would the reservoirs fill up. So you can see we don't get to the spill. This dashed line up here is where we'd be full. So even if we get our 50 inches or so of rain every year, this coming year, we're still only going to be at a 50 to 55,000 acre feet of water. Our rainfall has actually been tracking more like this blue line here, this dashed blue line. So this is more like where we think we will end up, if all things being equal. On the other hand, if we're successful driving conservation measures to this number over here, right, where we get 40% of water conservation, then this solid blue line represents where we think the reservoir levels will be. So, our rainy season runs from about December through April. So if we're really successful with conservation, we'll be somewhere here in the mid-30s. So still not a great position for us to be in at the end of a rainy season. So it is looking like a pretty tough water year coming up. Looking at our rainfall, many of us are, you may have heard folks talk about the 1970s drought, right? Drought of record and all the lore that goes with that and the sayings that got developed during that time. If it's yellow, be mellow, don't flush it, and that kind of stuff. So this green line here represents where we are today in terms of rainfall. And you can see the brown line, which exceeds it, is the 76, 77 drought. So just to, try to, putting this drought in context, it is historic. I mean, I think this is the driest period we've been in. So what have we been doing about this? So since 2020, actually, we've been tracking our water supply and rainfall very closely. And early in 2020, we actually accelerated the purchases of water from Sonoma, so we could try to bring in more than we normally would. So that if winter of 2020 was going to be dry, then we could bring in even more water from January through April. So that helped quite a bit. And then more recently, as early as February this year, we declared a drought and asked for voluntary conservation of water. That was followed up a month and a half later in April, which is sort of the end of our rainy season, with no miracle March in sight, and declared, water shortage emergency. And then subsequent board actions have added some additional irrigation measures in May, and they've adopted even tougher irrigation measures now. I think we're down to 1 day a week. And that's what this schedule looks like. So for Tiburon and Belvedere, if you're really only supposed to be irrigating, this is spray irrigation, right? So spray irrigation for these towns and cities would be limited to this day only. And so we've put together a crew of folks, volunteers, who drive around from 4 o'clock in the morning to 9 o'clock in the morning, just trying to educate customers as we find them, irrigating during these hours on the wrong day of the week. Because right now, whenever we make a new regulation or rule, it takes time for that to kind of get out into the community. So we're waiting for that to take effect, and it'll probably be a couple more weeks before we start sort of enforcing this. And maybe it's something we can reach out with you guys and partner some way. Just if you're driving around and you see folks irrigating on the wrong day of the week, just let them know that that the water conditions are such that we're in pretty tough shape. And most of us, right, have been in California for a long time and sort of just grew up with these types of water restrictions. Not washing your car at home is, maybe a new one, but most folks generally use water pretty wisely around the home. And, you don't irrigate between certain hours because you're going to get a lot of evaporation. And you cover your pools and spas and stuff. It's pretty common sense. I mean, even little things that kind of help are, folks shut the water off while they're brushing their teeth. Not something that everybody does, but if you start to do it, it just kind of gets you in that mindset and helps build. So there's a whole bunch of these restrictions, and like I said, there'll be a test later on those. But actually, you can't find them all. As you see the bottom of this slide, if anybody's curious, there are a bunch of them, and they're available on our web. So marinwater.org/water rules. And then as you all know, probably better than I, we're not really an organization that does a lot of enforcement. We tend to lean on education, but we also recognize that when you create a new regulation, it's really tough to capture all of the situations that might, fall into that. So there is this variance procedure for folks. If somebody needs to have their house painted, and I don't know if that's a granted variance, but it's just an example for, they can send an email here to variance@marinwater.org, and somebody will actually look at it, consider it, and make a decision and get back to them within a couple of days. And then some more sort of common sense stuff is just simply turn off your irrigation system or change your lawn, replace your lawn. And then, using brooms instead of hoses to clean things off, things like that. Just these are the sort of basic kind of, tips for homeowners. We have a whole team in our conservation group who can help folks figure out how they can conserve water. So they can make appointments, they can walk you through the host of different rebate programs that we have. And they can be reached here at the contact on the slide. So conservation@marinwater.org. And then there's a phone number there. Some of those incentives are pretty good. In fact, I think maybe even best in the West kind of category. Replacing your turf, your lawn at $3 a square foot. I think the only other place that I was aware of that does this at this price is Las Vegas. So just to kind of give you an idea of where our headspace is in terms of water supply and dryness, we're providing incentives the same as they are out in the desert. Mulch Madness is another one where you can sign up for the program. Somebody will come out and they'll just mulch your lawn for you. No cost, no charge. And it's done by a local nonprofit. There are other techie things that can go on your phone. This is a Flume thing, which is basically connects to your home Wi-Fi, and through an app gives you almost real-time use of the water in your house. So literally rubber bands, a thick, heavy-duty rubber band to the water meter outside, and then a little box plugged into the wall inside, and it connects to your Wi-Fi and then to your phone. And it's really useful if you have teenagers taking 30-minute showers. But in all seriousness, it typically costs about $200 to purchase the Flume, but the Marin Water rebate is about $115. And it says here, I guess there's a discount on it as well. So the customer ends up paying about $50 for it. And then a couple other incentives. For controllers, they give $100 back, and a clothes washer stuff as well, which is pretty common. Gray water, we do have laundry landscape stuff, so you can take that, from your laundry and put it out in the garden. They'll give you $100 for discount on those kits. Same thing for rain barrels or any cisterns, where you can use those to capture, before the hot water gets hot in the shower or in the kitchen sink area. You can just capture that water and then use it in the garden. And of course, we need as much help as we can getting the word out, because no matter how much coverage we try to get, there's always more folks that we can reach. So anything if anybody wants to connect with us, there's many different ways to do it, but basically conservation@marinwater.org. And we've got materials that you can have, these yard signs. Just call up, let us know. We'll put a few outside. You can come by and pick them up, and make sort of a contactless pickup. So yeah, we just invite folks to connect with us if they have any questions about water supply, water conservation. That's the end of my presentation tonight, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Well, thanks, Paul. That was very good. And let me just start off the conversation with I was here in 1975, and it seemed to me at that time the topic of discussion was the drought. That's what everybody talked about. And we were standing in wash basins and saving the water and putting it on the plants and trying to truck water in to keep your gardens alive. Of course, we didn't have COVID hogging headlines, but this time around, I don't see that urgency in discussions with neighbors and over, at the bar and all that sort of thing. And I don't know why, because this, as you say, this is a worse drought than we had in 1975.
Yeah, it's an interesting observation. I hadn't really heard that particularly before about the drought. I have heard, I don't know if any of you were sports fans listening to Gary Radnich over the years, right, on 680. And he'd always say that, you know, there's so many different forms of entertainment for people today that it's really hard for even sports teams to, you know, garner that market. And this gets back to what I was talking about with the drought and our messaging, is that no matter how much we try, every board meeting, there's somebody that shows up and goes, "There's a drought? I didn't know about that." Or, you know, "How come you guys didn't tell me you were doing A, B, and C incentives?" So it is just a continuing challenge that we're trying to meet in getting the word out.
Mike Lanter has his hand up. Mike?
Hey, Paul, thank you so much. You know, I work on the development side as much as I'm doing the prevention stuff here in Tiburon Fire District. And, you know, California's declared a housing crisis. And with that, what kind of forecasting are you looking at for the irrigation and such with this demand for new housing, which is going to put a huge demand on your system? Are you going to be looking at, you know, potentially not having or not, I don't want to say the word ban, but trying to dissuade people from putting in large landscaping that's going to require that amount of water? And I think it would be prudent for you to consider that. That's just a comment, really.
Yeah, no, it's an excellent comment. It really is. And I think tonight the board are actually the Marin Water Board are taking up Ordinance 453, which addresses this issue of landscaping with new connections. I mean, it's a difficult, you know, it's a difficult balance to strike between, you know, somebody saying no development at all, right, and the economic impacts associated with that. And currently tonight, I think the ordinance as it's written in draft is just for new connections to not do landscaping, like you say, and save that water. Once the drought's over, then they can revisit their landscape plans. In a longer term sense, though, and just as a mindset, right, in Southern California for the last 30 something years, they have really manned the ramparts in terms of water supply. And they've done a fantastic job. Because, you know, well, up here in California, in Northern California, right, we've been very used and sort of spoiled by regular pineapple expresses coming in and just tanking us up at the right time. So what we find today is this parody or sort of irony where Southern California does not have a water supply shortage, and yet Northern California is in pretty dire straits.
If I could jump in here too, Paul, I don't know if you had heard, but I was given a box yesterday of giveaways, things that resources that you all are providing to residents to help with the drought. So I wanted to point out that I have a bunch of these at my office that are available. And so this is the hose that with the trigger to stop. I have the sink aerators. And if you want to talk about any of these, Paul, let me know. I have a couple of the shower heads, the low water shower heads.
Yep.
And these awesome little tablets that you put into your toilet. And if the water turns a color after 15 minutes, it lets you know that you have a leak in your toilet and need to get it fixed, that you're not wasting water. And lastly, my favorite is the 5-minute or less shower timer for those teenagers you were talking about. And I do have a box of these available if anybody that's attending this meeting wants to come get some. I'll have them until they're gone, and then I'm going to refer you all back to the Marin Municipal Water District. What I don't have is the yard signs. And I think that I speak for all of us when I say we would like to help with the education portion and provide lawn signs to our people. So if you do have any of those, I would be happy to take them here at the police station and provide them to anybody that wants them.
Okay, we'll have somebody drop some off. Any idea how many? 10?
If I could take 20 of them and I can pick them up. We can have somebody come by and pick them up as well to save the trip. But just email me, call me, text me, send a pigeon, and we'll send somebody over to pick them up.
Definitely. Sounds great.
Paul, Tom Cromwell again. Let me ask you one other question, which does get a fair amount of attention in the IJ. And that's the concern about desal versus a pipe across Richardson Bay. And as we all know, we had a pipe across Richardson Bay and took it out about 6 or 7 years ago, whenever it was. I guess, number one, were we a little short-sighted in pulling that thing out? And it looks like now we were, but that's water over the dam. And then there are some issues with desalinization, but apparently some of the problems with desal and hyper salinity of the stuff you're putting back into the bay is not as much of a problem as used to be. And I understand MWD is now considering both of those. Do you think one or both of those is going to actually happen? And if not, what happens next year if we have another year like this year? Then we're really in trouble.
I'm going to bring you to my next board meeting. No, those are good questions, really, and trying to remember them. So as far as taking the pipe off of the bridge, the bridge stuff, that's owned by Caltrans, and I don't think that's under Water District's purview as to whether that pipe was going to be ever allowed to stay. I don't think it was taken out 5 or 6 years ago. My understanding was it was taken out quite a while ago. But yeah, it would have been nice to have that pipeline for sure. It would be, it's always nice to be looking at water, not for it when you need it. Then just touching on desal, yeah, your comment about the brine not being an issue, it's always an issue if it's not managed properly. And one of the concepts that we came up with, as you know, we ran a desalination pilot plant here at the Rod and Gun Club near the end of the bridge there for a couple of years. And we have a lot of good reports and environmental studies that we did during that time. And one of them addressed the brine. And the solution that we came up with for that was to blend it with the wastewater effluent, which is fresh water at the CMSA wastewater plant. And so if you're able to combine when you take the salt out of seawater, the brine becomes doubly salty. You hear folks talk about hypersaline and things like that, but really when it comes down to it, it's just twice as salty. So I think seawater is about 3% salty, so now it's 6% salty. And that gets diluted with the wastewater at CMSA before it goes back out into the bay. So we can actually bring it down to a closer, seawater concentration that would be typical of the bay. So yeah, it's a little bit less troublesome than if you were just putting straight doubly salty seawater out there. And then as to, for desal, what we've discovered is in terms of the providing relief for the drought for next year. So to address your question of if we have another year like we just had, then yeah, we do need that water supply from Marin. What we found is that desal equipment that we can get on that sort of notice would not provide a big enough capacity. So what we're looking for is a capacity that would provide the indoor water use for Marin, right? So that's essentially, it's a little bit more than our straight human health and safety, but it's pretty close. So that's what we're shooting for, is a water supply that can provide that indoor water use. But we need it to be deliverable by, sort of second half of next year. And desal just doesn't have the capacity that we need. We can build a small plant. We can, find the facilities. I think we found a couple of units in Australia that could provide us about 3.5 million gallons per day. But we're looking for more like 12.5 million gallons a day. The long-term larger desal plant, that's a 3-year process. So it wouldn't really help us in the current drought. So that leaves us really with, as a solution, the pipe on the bridge. What we've found so far for that is that it does have the capacity. We can get the capacity that we need to meet our indoor water use. And what we've also found is that there are folks, even though this is historically dry conditions, up in the Yuba Sacramento area, there are water purveyors that have a lot of water for sale. So water appears to be available, and there are existing, conveyances for the water. Primarily, it goes into the Sacramento River, and one of two routes, either from the East Bay Mud-owned Freeport facility, where it would take it out of the Sacramento and pump it 20 miles through 3 pumping plants to the McElemy Aqueduct, and then from there on into San Pablo Reservoir, and then be treated at the El Sobrante treatment plant and provided to us at that sort of east end of the Richmond Bridge, where we would need to then pump it and bring it over to Marin. So the route exists, and there's a secondary route that would go past the Freeport intake and go all the way down to the Delta where Contra Costa has their intake. Then that water would be put into Los Vaqueros Reservoir and then could be pumped through the McElemy Aqueduct up to the East Bay Mud facilities and treated. So water seems to exist. We know pretty much how to build pipelines and pump stations. It's a very tight schedule, and we're gonna need some luck along the way to get that project delivered by next July. And that's by no means a slam dunk decision either. So right now we're in feasibility stage with Caltrans. We're looking at 3 or 4 different locations on the bridge to put the pipeline. So there's a lot of decisions, that would need to occur between, now and the end of the year for us to get that designed. And then it would be bid presumably towards the end of the year, should the board be willing. And then construction would follow in the 6 months to 8 months or so after that.
Awesome.
Well, it's a little scary, have to admit.
Yep.
Any other questions for Paul?
I have a quick one. Clearly, when you talk about Southern California, I know that decades ago, they did a lot to incentivize people to conserve water, and that turned into what they then referred to as hardening of demand, where you just don't have the ability to conserve more. And certainly the interconnect that they have with the State Water Project is and the storage out in Diamond Valley and such gives them more flexibility than we have in Marin. You just covered one of my questions, which had to do with the practicality of the pipeline or the interconnect. But what do we say to people? Because I've run into this with neighbors already in terms of hardening the demand. The whole issue that when looking at your slides, we already have an on-demand water heater. We already have drip irrigation. We already don't have a lawn. All these things. And I've had people just kind of look at me and sort of throw their hands up like, what the hell am I supposed to do?
Yeah, it's a good point. It really is. There are quite a few folks that have done a lot of the lifting already in terms of efficiency. But as we do our research, right, there are 50 million square feet of lawn still in private residences in Marin County in our service area. So when we look at our water demand between summer and winter, it doubles. So I would say that while there are a number of good citizens who do have very efficient irrigation systems and well-planted and thought out, gardens and so on, there are many of us who really are still living that sort of, couple thousand square feet of turf in the front yards,
Right.
backyards. Yeah.
Great. And Lori, are we going to be able to get a copy of those slides?
Yes, and this is being recorded, and so I was thinking I might just post this to Nextdoor so that we could share those wonderful slides with everybody. But Paul, if you would email me your slides, maybe we do that so the whole meeting's not posted. Well,
Yeah,
we'll figure it out. But yeah, they're great slides.
Yeah, the slides are great, and I appreciate the fact that you marched right through them. You didn't, it's something because You moved at a great pace, too fast to write notes, but perfect speed to stay with you.
And thank you. And Chief Wu has a question. He's
Hi, Paul. Just a very short question. Earlier, you mentioned that some of the water is diverted for I guess fishery or some type of the environmental aspect of it. So the question I have is, number one, is what percentage of that goes to residential and what percentage goes to for the fishes? And is there a future dire situation? Is there any thought about maybe diverting more water from the fisheries to residential use?
Yeah, excellent question. Just, I would, not trying to be trite, but fish are people too. It's a question we all go to, and I'll answer it straight up. I think the percentage you're thinking of is pretty close to even, right?
Yeah, I have no idea.
There's about 10,000 acre feet of water that's released for fish annually. Just it varies on the year, right? Because fish releases are tied to how much water is in the stream, which depends how much it rains, and so it varies. But on average, between 10 and 12,000 acre feet of water goes to fish. We drink about 25,000 acre feet, so it's pretty close to half the amount of water that we drink goes to fish in that respect. Of course, in this case, what we're talking about is Lagunitas Creek, right, which is one of the last remaining sort of bastions of coho run in this area of California. So they're a federally endangered species, and of course, obviously California protected as well. So we are exploring, though, what's called a temporary urgency change petition, which we go to the state board, right, and would ask them for relief from the fish release. It's not looking like it's going to save us as much water as we might have hoped, but we might be able to gain, maybe 1,000 or 2,000 acre feet back. So we're looking at that. In fact, we've done a couple of quick studies that are ongoing at the moment, and I think you'll see a board item on that sometime in August, maybe August 3rd, if memory serves. It's an excellent question.
No, great, thank you. You guys just mentioned about, so
Yeah.
I have no idea what the percentage was. You had mentioned earlier, so I was kind of curious.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thanks.
Any other questions? Well, Paul, I guess we will move on, and you have other meetings, so don't feel obligated to hang around.
Okay.
But thank you very much. It's I'm glad I'm not in your shoes. I'll have to admit that.
Thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. All right, we will move on with our new business, and the first one of those is evacuated tags. And Lori, I assume that is to be differentiated from our evacuation decals. This is
Yes.
a different issue, so.
I'm not sure how I get this screen back to me. Can you all see me on the main screen? I see Dr.
Yes,
Cromwell. Okay, so if you guys can see these, this is the Tiburon evacuated tag, but Belvedere has the same one. These are available for the residents to pick up at both the Belvedere and the Tiburon police departments. We put out a public service announcement video, and it's posted on Nextdoor. I believe the fire department was putting it on their Instagram. Tiburon PD put it on their Instagram. We're trying to spread the word. Residents can come pick these up. We're asking them to put it into their go bag or by their front door. And then in the event that they have to evacuate, they can just tape these, post these, however, someplace that's visible from the street. So when officers roll by doing evacuations, they can see that the home has already been evacuated, and they can save some valuable minutes not trying to check and clear a home for possible people inside. So any help we can get in spreading the word about these tags would be appreciated. I can send out the video that was made promoting these. I can send that all to you guys. Hoping maybe we can send it out to block captains and try to get these into the hands of the people that live here.
Have we had much call for them?
Yes. We were
Where do we
actually, we had people showing up at the fire department and the police department the day Mill Valley posted the video on their Instagram. So we had to quickly post the video to our media outlets over here. And we've actually had quite a few people come by steadily and pick these up at the Tiburon Police Department. Chief Wu over in Belvedere, have you had any people coming by to pick them up?
Nope. We did put a message out through our email. I'm sorry, our e-newsletter last month about about the availability of it, and then we're going to probably try and message it some more. And then one of the things that a city manager is actually contemplating is actually for us to mail them out to all our residents. Luckily, we don't have that many, but that's certainly one option that we're exploring. But it's currently available at our police station.
Awesome. Thank you.
And I guess Shane, I think Shane Jones is on from the ARC. We might ask the ARC, Shane, to participate in getting the word out to the population also.
I think I sent Shane a message about them, and I might have sent her the link to the video. I'll talk to her probably tomorrow. She usually calls me on Wednesdays, so I'll talk to her about it.
Good. Any questions about evacuated tags? All right, let's move on then. Should we go back to live in-person meetings? I would have to say a month ago, I would have overwhelmingly said yes. Now with the Delta variant exploding all over the country and including California, I'm not so sure. What are other thoughts?
So I was going to give an update on COVID later on in the agenda here. And when I made the agenda, I was thinking for sure even then, a couple of weeks ago, that we would be able to go back to in-person. And now I'm not so sure we should either. And so I was thinking maybe we could do a combination of both. If anybody felt comfortable meeting, we could sit 6 feet apart inside town council chambers next month. Or we can wait and see.
Other thoughts? I guess I would say
Our next meeting's
sorry, Jane.
sorry, we have until October, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, I
Well,
think we should.
why don't we just put it
Let's just see what.
put it in abeyance and look and follow the numbers over the next 2 or 3 months and see where it's going. If it goes away, then fine. If it doesn't, probably continue Zoom.
I'm feeling like I'm just figuring out this whole Zoom thing. So I'm totally happy to stick with Zoom now that I've got this figured out.
Well, Lori, I don't know how to get my picture up there. I guess
if you go down to the lower left-hand corner of your screen next to mute, there should be a start video.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
There you are. I
All
thought
right.
you just didn't want us to see you today.
Yeah.
Maybe you were in
Okay.
Mexico poolside or something.
Any other new business on anybody's agenda? Then we will move into some old business issues, and we do have a few of those. And I think the major one is Chris Murphy. Chris, as you know, is the newest member of our group. And we met with Chris just 3 or 4 days ago with fire department, police department. And he has some, I think, some very interesting ideas. So Chris, we're not ready for a complete report as yet because we're going to meet again, but I think just an outline of your ideas and where we're going would be appropriate at this point.
Great. So to recap, as you stated, yourself, Jamie, Lori, Deputy Chief Tom, Deputy Fire Marshal Mike, we all got together at the police station for about an hour, talked through a bit of history to kind of paint some context for how our communities have been able to engage in disaster preparedness in the past, as well as kind of maybe a retrospective on where we've been making progress, where we felt we've hit challenges, and kind of came out with a renewed kind of approach, and actually borrowing from our friends over in Mill Valley on their kind of strategic plan that they put in place, as well as an annual report as a look back to say, did they achieve their goals around disaster preparedness? So, I'd comment to the council and to the audience. There was a reflection about an accountability layer that this council can provide to our communities as well, of things that seemingly have been approved but were not implemented. That was a bit of an expansion on the role and responsibilities for the group. And yeah, it's kind of the commitment from me to present a draft of that new kind of very measurable, very tactical strategic plan for feedback, comments at our next council meeting in October.
Very good, Chris. Thank you. I thought that was a very good meeting. And my takeaways were, number one, we need to identify our goals. We talk about a lot of things, but we have not really identified goals that aggressively. And the second thing is to pursue those on an annual basis and have some metric that we can measure whether or not we're accomplishing those goals. And then the third thing is to get the word out. And the ARC hopefully will help us do that, but we have not been very successful at all in the past few years in getting the word out to the population. So we need to work on how to do that and how we can get more aggressive at that. Because educating the people on the dais is fine, but it really isn't accomplishing the purpose that this council exists for. So, Chris, thank you for calling our attention to all that, and we'll pursue all that. It's going to require a fair amount of work. I've identified at least, I think, 11 or 12 different projects that we can be more aggressive about. So whether or not we want to do that, if we have the manpower to do that, I don't know, but let's at least explore it. We'll see.
Absolutely.
Lori, other comments or let's see, anybody else at that meeting? Mike Lanter, you were there. Any comments?
You know what, I would really very much just like to thank Chris for taking the lead on this and his enthusiasm and just getting us all together and just being that energy that we so needed. So thank you, Chris.
Yeah, let me echo that and also say that the work that Tom and Mike knew a lot about when we could sit around and just talk about things was really helpful, because it's pretty clear we don't have to reinvent the wheel on a lot of these things. We just have to borrow and get out at the source and change a few words, you know. So, you know, as we left the meeting, you know, after the first week of August, I'm happy to jump back in, do whatever I can to help. But I also encourage the rest of you guys to keep moving on it, because, you know, going from one meeting to the next in short cycles really gets things done. Whereas if we wait for another 4 to 6 weeks, other things get on the top of the priority list.
Mike, any comments from your?
Well, I obviously echo everything that has been said, and obviously looking forward to working with Tom as always, because he's such an amazing guy with such a vast experience. He really is. I mean, I kid with him when we're in the meetings, but you know, we're friends on top of that. But you know, he's an amazing resource, and so yeah, we can learn a lot from him. And then obviously this might be able to dovetail into my report if that's okay, Dr. Cromwell.
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Yeah. So obviously the first thing before the Firewise is that our chipper program is doing quite well. We're at about 358 tons, and that is actually almost 100 tons over what we did last year in 5 events. So with 2 more to go on August 10th, and obviously the last being September 11th, we kind of briefly talked in that revitalization meeting about doing something special on September 11th, and I'd love to do that. So, you know, I will keep you all posted on what we're aiming for there. But Upper Sugarloaf, you may have seen me on the front page of the ARC. Yeah, that was me. Had to you know, shell out a good amount of ice cream as penance for that, but no, I was glad to be on there. There it is, Upper Sugarloaf, everyone. Second Firewise to join. We've got T-Berry in the hopper and Mateo in the hopper, so that program is taking off, and I think will be amazing for us here. And then really it's just Zone Haven, which is moving forward. I don't want to steal any thunder from my counterparts in Belvedere, but I think our zones are all set up. The specific evacuation maps are going to be developed and roll out sometime by the end of hopefully summer. And then this public rollout for Zone Haven will occur, I believe, first of the year. I was on a brief Zone Haven today, but we were dealing with other communities that I wasn't interested in sticking around for. But I will keep attending those meetings, as well as I'm sure Chief Wu and Director Radnich are doing. So I'm excited about Zone Haven. I think you will be too when we roll it out. And obviously this is going to be a critical body to promote that, sell it, and continue to support it. So that is my report, and thank you very much to everybody.
Thanks, Mike. And yeah, I think Zone Haven, which has been in the works now for a year or so, once it is rolled out next spring, will give our population real-time idea of what's going on if we have an emergency, not just have to listen to some sort of thing on our radios or whatever. So I think that will be a significant advance for us. I apologize. We have not been terribly helpful with you with your chipper project, but we can still work on that. Unfortunately, it seems like something else comes up every time you have a chipper day. But you are doing a fabulous job. We appreciate that. So,
Thank
all
you.
right. Anything else about any of those issues, Firewise, chipper day, or zone haven? All right, let's go into COVID updates. Lori, we hear too much about COVID, but there's always more to hear. What
There
do you
is. So last night we got our weekly update from the county op area, which is Marin County OES. They send us weekly updates with all the latest and greatest on what's going on nation, state, and mostly Marin wide. And so I just kind of highlighted some of the key parts from our latest situation report. And so currently we have 184 active cases in Marin. There have been a number of breakthrough cases where people that were fully vaccinated did come down with COVID. And the nice thing is that it's been no or very little symptoms. There's been no hospitalizations or deaths of anybody that's been vaccinated. So anybody that's been hospitalized, we are finding that they are the people that have chosen for whatever reason to not be vaccinated. So one of the biggest things we can do is to continue to promote getting vaccinated. And so Marin County has a whole bunch of different vaccination locations, including pop-up vaccination locations. And those sites are all taking just walk-ins. You can just walk in to any of the vaccination sites or the pop-ups and get vaccinated. Apparently no questions asked. In some cases, you don't even have to provide identification. They're just trying to get shots in arms. Due to the rising number of COVID cases in Marin County, Marin has joined most of the other Bay Area agencies, and they are recommending that people wear masks inside. It's not required. They are recommending that people do wear the masks inside, whether they have been vaccinated or not. So it's just a recommendation. At this time, so this was a item that's been coming up a lot on the news, and people have been hearing a lot about booster shots. And so right now, Marin County Public Health is not recommending booster shots. It is something they're trying to gather more information on. It's not known if they're going to be needed or not. So they'll keep an eye on it and let us know if they are going to recommend it at any point, probably in line with what the CDC says. So that's it. The website that Marin County has on the COVID situation and vaccination areas is wonderful. So they've been staying really up to date. So go to Marin County, their county website, and click on the COVID and all the information you could ever possibly want, and then some. But again, it's 184 in Marin right now, and nobody that's been vaccinated has been hospitalized or has had severe symptoms.
Thanks, Lori. Some of you may have seen in the paper this morning that Marin County has received an award, recognition award, for their digital systems and getting the word out on COVID. And they have been voted the #1 agency in the entire country from the standpoint of getting the word out in population or communities of 250,000 to 500,000. So Matt Willis and our public health department has done a marvelous job. I was up at doing vaccinations a month and a half ago, and we were running through 2,000 to 3,000 people a day at the Civic Center. And that is, well, it's closed now, and we have dropped to a dribble of people wanting vaccines, which is extremely unfortunate and very problematic. So that's the next major hurdle. And as you have heard from some of the national press, it's now being called the pandemic of the unvaccinated. So we got to work on a lot of work to do, but we'll keep at it. Other comments about COVID? I will say, yeah, our positivity rate, which we worked like crazy in Marin to get down below 1.5 per 100,000 residents, has now gone up yesterday to more than 4 per 100,000. So that's quadrupled. And it's continuing frighteningly fast. All right, so let's see, Belvedere Black Captain program. We have gone through a little bit of a upheaval over there. And Robert is on, I think he's still here anyway. We started out a few years ago when we originated this program as a totally volunteer group, and then asked the city of Belvedere to actually make us a permanent group because we needed some help from staff of the city of Belvedere to keep track of our block captains and who was new and who was leaving, all that sort of stuff. They did that, fortunately, and we have had substantial help from Robert. And the problem now has become that we are having trouble with our meetings, which we only meet once a quarter, and I think we need to reassess that. We used to meet once every month and then every 2 months, and now it's once a quarter. And we have trouble getting a quorum to satisfy the Brown Act. So Robert, any comment? We're rethinking this and see how we can get to some point where we can keep everybody happy.
Yeah, I can comment a little bit, Tom. I think the idea is to try and make it so it's as easy as possible for this group to meet in a public format without having to fall underneath all of the, the Brown Act requirements for noticing public agendas and those types of things. What the committee was before we made an official committee was a citizens committee. So essentially they could meet, did not have to necessarily meet the quorum requirements, and could meet informally outside city council's umbrella. So I think there's some interest in returning back to that, just so we can continue to meet even when we don't have all the members present to get things done. And then there's also some interest in expanding the I guess you call it expanding the scope of the block captain group meetings, that not to look at things that are just block captain related, but to look at things specific to Belvedere related to emergency readiness, preparedness, and how to get our community ready. So, we're still discussing this internally, the best way to make that happen. But, I think probably the way that we're leaning is towards going with a resident task force, or something that's just specific to look at specific issues that are important to city council and residents. These groups would form, they would look at these different issues, they report back to city council with recommendations, and then that task force would dissolve and a new one would be formed when we have another issue that we want to work on. So again, the whole reason for doing this is just to make it easy for us to meet and get things done. And yeah, we're going to continue to work on that and find the best way, the best mechanism to make that happen.
Thanks, Robert. Yeah, let me meet with you sometime over the next week or so, and we can get Adam gathered together and see what we can come up with. And we got to keep this thing going.
Yeah,
we just have to figure out a way that we can logistically do it. So thanks. From the standpoint of the block captains, we are having a training program this Saturday. Trying to do training programs during COVID was very, very difficult, so we really didn't do much. But we will have a training program that will involve all of the block captains this Saturday. It will be some sort. I have to meet with Adam and Adam tomorrow actually, and see where we are, how we're going to actually do this. But that will be this Saturday. Then on August 14th, Tiburon and Belvedere will participate in the Sidewalk CPR, which is a program that Kerry Groves from the EMS agency at the county has originated, 4, 5, 6, 7 years ago, I'm not sure which, but it involves the entire county. And it is a 4-hour time window that sites are set up all throughout the county. The one in Belvedere and Tiburon will be at the fountain down at the end of Main Street. And we will be demonstrating stop the bleed and chest compression CPR for anybody who stops by, and it'll be like a 5 or 10 minute discussion and go on to the next person. But they have been very successful in the past, training several thousand people. So we will do that again on August 14th. Okay. Lori, let's see, where are we at this point?
So we're now at the get ready update. And this is another one, kind of like the going back to in-person meetings. I was getting ready to put out a new schedule for get ready classes, and I'm now second guessing that. I think I'm going to try to make the new class schedule And I think I'm going to try to do a get ready class like this. It'll be live. I'll record it, and we can have people present as participants. And I think I'm going to try to do a Zoom class. So we have the video out on YouTube that's available to watch. Hopefully we're still going to have more videos coming. We've filmed. Mike Lanter sent a couple of his people over, and we filmed a little movie, which is still in the editing phases. And I don't know why so much editing needs to be done. But we're working on some other follow-up videos for a YouTube channel. But I'm thinking maybe a Zoom get ready class. I want to go back to in person. I think there's a lot to be said for sitting down and talking with people in person about personal preparedness, but we're going to keep being safe, better safe than sorry. So for now, something's coming.
And I can say the same thing for the Marin Medical Reserve Corps and its FADER program, First Aid for Disaster Response, which we have had very active until COVID hit. We had trained about somewhere in the range of 1,000 volunteers, 1,000 volunteers in Marin County, and how to stop the bleed and how to use tourniquets and how to use Narcan and all those sorts of things. We had to quit that program when COVID started because it's very, very hands-on. We are now very much in discussions as to how we'll get that up and running, and we were very anticipatory that we might do that in the next month or so. But now we are dealing again with the Delta variant, so we have to get back and follow the numbers and see where we are, rethink things. All right. Any other announcements? Any other issues from anybody else?
No, but I would like to circle back, Dr. Cromwell, on the meeting minutes. We are missing a couple of council members, so I don't believe we have a quorum. So we'll have to readdress the meeting minutes at our next
Okay,
meeting.
they have been distributed. If you're on the council, please review them and we'll cover that at the next meeting. Thank you for those minutes. They're
Awesome.
actually very complete, Laura.
Thank you.
So any other issues before our next meeting date?
Just if you can, this Saturday during your block captains meeting, if it's appropriate, do you mind pushing out the message regarding the evacuation tags? Just kind of help spread the word.
Okay, we'll do that. We will do that.
Thank you very much.
Okay,
Thank
Lori.
Last thing I was going to say, just on that last point, I was thinking that maybe a synthetic solution of get ready classes or the disaster. If we were to go to some larger venues, I know the Tiburon Yacht Club is very happy to open their room, and it's a huge room, and you can, you got sliding glass doors on two sides. And the other thing would be before school starts, maybe even Del Mar Gym or places like that, where if people could get there in person, because it does help a lot to have people there. And
I agree. And you know what, Jamie, I'd love to talk to you about using your yacht club out there. That sounds like fun. I assume they serve beer and stuff.
oh yeah,
Or
yeah.
we should
And we get our,
let's have a fun class up there. Let's talk offline.
Our bartender's Ken Royal. He comes down in the fire engine. He comes down the ambulance and pours
All right.
pours
Well,
a beer right out the back.
I'm gonna make the next class schedule soon, so let's
Okay.
talk.
I'm sure, Laura, the San Francisco Yacht Club would be amenable to their facility also.
You know what? Maybe I'll just see if I can have them at all the yacht clubs. It sounds like fun to me.
Or at least try.
Okay. Thank you all so much.
All right, thanks everybody for showing up. And our
Thanks.
19th, is that our next meeting?
Yes.
Oops.
Yes.
19th.
19th.
Okay. All right, everybody.
All right.
See you then.